yesterday as well. Flash Wolves could be the forerunners for the title.
Well, it's exciting to see whether or not they can pull it off. As we jump into picks and bans, and it looks like the Team Liquid are returning to normality a little bit more. No more Rakan will be available down in the bottom lane. I'm fascinated as to what kind of a playstyle Doublelift and Joey will look to go for towards bot. Will they look to go for a strong 2 versus 2, or will they try to play more on the back foot?
I mean, if it's me, I'm giving Joey whatever he is most comfortable on,
sure.
right? This is a guy who has 2 games played in the NALCS as an emergency sub when Stixxay was sick. He was, in the hospital. He came in, and Aframu was his AD carry, right? That is his entirety of his experience in the LCS. So certainly you want him to be in his comfort zone, and I'm going to be very interested to see if Impact will be back on tanks. That is where TL found most of their success in the later half of the split, as well as in playoffs. And Team Liquid desperately needs a win to build their confidence and to start raising up in the standings. They don't want to be sitting at 0-3 going up against Fnatic later today, who just took down Kingzone.
Yeah, the pressure will be on Liquid, and I think you highlighted it very nicely. Impact needs to be on one of those tanks that I think has a very good ability to affect the rest of the map too. Because while we saw him on the gangplank, he just struggled to show his influence on the rest of the lanes by just dying in a single 1 versus 1. So I'm fascinated to see the direction that Liquid will take, and if they can compensate and change some of the weaknesses that they showed on day 1.
We can already see the direction Flash Wolves is taking. They're banning out those AD carries, getting rid of Tristana, getting rid of Kai'Sa, trying to put Doublelift on something maybe he's not as used to playing, or maybe even forcing him towards that Jhin.
Yeah, it will be interesting, and I was surprised to see some of the community criticism towards Doublelift and his Jhin, because I think though the team did not perform well overall, he was a standout player. 1.2k damage per minute was outstanding. He was on point, and the team just needs to work well together, because they do not usually win and lose on the back of one individual player. It is about their team play, their coordination, and that is really what was sorely lacking yesterday.
Now, we did see Xmithie play the Trundle yesterday, and unfortunately he wasn't able to have a huge amount of influence with the pick. And it will mean that the Flash Wolves can once again get a bit of comfort down towards the bot side. The Varus ban, I think, is very good because it will be taken off of Betty, but his other big comfort pick is the Ezreal. The question is, can Liquid's 2v2 find a matchup that gives them pressure over the Ezreal?
Yeah, certainly the case, and I do, again, really like, as you said, that Varus being taken away, not only because it was comfort, but because it really enabled a lot of what Flash Wolves was trying to do. They were trying to gank for bottom lane, enable Betty on this pick, and having the Varus gives you so much gank assistance, really can enable your junglers and your top laners, everyone to pile down there and find those easy kills. So they're forcing Betty to show us something new. And we may be getting the Caitlyn back here for Doublelift, which was his other undefeated pick in the NALCS. This is something that I think has been very underrated by pros. We heard Frost Curran talking at the start of the day on AD about how Betty and some of these AD carries were saying, no, we think it's too slow, it doesn't work in the meta. I tend to disagree. We heard the same statements from pros at Worlds last year saying, no, Caitlyn is not playable. And then WE brought it out and took every turret on the map at like 10 minutes, and it's like, oh, well, I guess we were wrong.
The power of this as well is, the Ezreal is probably going to go towards that double tier build. It takes longer to scale, so even if Caitlyn is going to take 3-4 items, you're matching the Ezreal in terms of pressure and in terms of tempo.
But I do feel like the whole strength of Caitlyn is largely about her early game, right? And while changes have come to Caitlyn over the last, or this year entirely, the fact that she can generate a lot of pressure during the laning phase, simply due to the range advantages that she has, I think will be very pivotal if Liquid can effectively play through the bottom lane. And one of the big things that could make this difficult is the gangplank that has just been locked in for Hanabi.
Yeah, certainly the case. And I also think, the gangplank is a bit of a masterstroke here in the draft, expecting that Impact will be playing a tank and essentially self-counterpicking, for his opponent. Is definitely very strong. And while I agree, Caitlyn can scale very well alongside that Ezreal, you have to worry about the 1 and 2 item power spikes. 2 items generally is when the Ezreal is at its strongest, and Caitlyn is kind of in this power trough generally until she hits 3. So it's going to be around how these teams can play timings. And one of the ways that Caitlyn can kind of avoid taking those fights is simply by having the lane pressure, looking to siege, avoiding the team fights, and that is something that Doublelift has done very well in the NALCS. We'll see if he's going to be able to bring it to the international stage here with Joey in his international debut.
Now, one of the big picks I'm looking at is Morgana. It is a favorite of Sword Art, and I know that he's more than happy to play it into the Braum, but if you ban that away, Alistair then becomes the next priority champion for him. And when we think back to his play-in stage, where he was able to find a very convincing win over Gambit, it was when he played this roaming playmaking support, and he had impact everywhere, all over the map.
They do have to remember, though, if you're going for something like a Morgana, no tanks have been drafted, unless they are going to put Maple on a tank in the mid lane, which is generally not the style he likes to play. You can open yourselves up for those sorts of hard engaged teams. Something like an Ornn that Impact would like to play can make these picks fairly vulnerable. You have 2 AD carries. Generally, you want some sort of front line to kind of be up there and protecting them, and it may have to come from support, but it comes down to which do you prioritize, right? Do you prioritize the lane pressure, or do you prioritize, having more strong team fights? And both are options, and it looks like they are looking more about just kind of trying to win lane, and then you're bringing yourselves into a split push game.
And there is the Morgana lock that you talked about. The Alistair was banned by Team Liquid. So now we have to see where Team Liquid go with this next rotation.
I want to just quickly jump back onto Flash Rules, because there are a couple big things that I can already see from this draft. Number one, very strong mid-game spike. Graves, Ezreal, GP, all very, very effective once they get things like the Trinity Force. And they can add a second item in there too, but the early to mid-game portion of the map is definitely in their favor. The problem is they have little engage tools. You talked about this, Azael, where it's easy for Liquid to engage on them, but in terms of actually engaging yourselves, Flash Rules right now do not have many options to start fights.
Yeah, I mean, it's fishing for a binding essentially right now. Pobelter, I'm expecting to see something perhaps like an Azir. I think that can fit the bill pretty well.
Oh,
no,
you're not.
Oh my God, a blind pick Yasuo from Pobelter. That was about the last thing I was expecting here to come out. But
So tell me,
are a lot of
Azael,
knockups.
when you think of Pobelter, what are the first champions that come to your mind?
I think of Azir, I think of Talia, I think of Orianna.
So
I do
control
not think
mages
of Yasuo whatsoever. And this is a blind pick Yasuo, and it looks like Maple will be trying to bring the tank. He's going for a Galio. Traditionally, you do see AP Galio, but still with the damage reduction on your W, that can bring a lot of that. And I mean, we could see Maple actually going for more of a defensive full tank style build, when this is essentially full physical damage coming out here from TL, but this is really exciting.
Now, one of the reasons why I can see this working for Liquid and the rationale why they may have gone for it, we talked a lot about the lack of engage coming out from the Flash Walls, and they said, listen, they're not going to round the mid laner out with strong engage. And the thing about Galio is he's good follow-up, but the engage himself is not that reliable. So what they're saying is, we can play the 1-3-1. We put Yasuo off onto a side lane, and he outscales everyone on this Flash Walls comp, and their goal is to play side lanes. But that worries me a little bit, Azael, because yesterday when they tried this, they weren't able to pull it off.
Yeah, it's definitely a pretty crazy comp here. Also, I think from Flash Rolls, because if you don't have the way to actually engage, then it becomes very difficult if you're getting sieged on by a Caitlyn, if you're starting to just lose those turrets, but they do have very powerful disengage. I mean, if you're ulting in as the Yasuo onto one of these AD carries and the Galio ultimate comes in, that can shut things down very, very quickly, but at the same time, a lot of squishy members here are being presented from the Flash Wolves. If you pull off that Ornn into Yasuo combo, that can be deadly.
It has been a day of surprises. Up until now, I think we can add another one to the list. The Yasuo mid for Pobelter.
I mean, there are so many ways to enable this Yasuo too. This is a comp largely built around his success. You have Braum ultimate knockup, the Pillar from Trundle, the Ornn knockup as well as ultimate. That is a lot there to have him be successful.
And we heard that Liquid was practicing a lot with Fnatic. Let's see what tricks he's learned from Cax coming into the matchup against Flash Wolves. 0-2 right now for the North American representatives. And to get a win with a Yasuo would definitely be a statement.
I mean, it seemed like Fnatic was taking a page out of Liquid's book with the Jhin, and that didn't work out as well. So I'm hoping the Yasuo is a little bit more clean.
Well, for Flash Wolves, we talked already a lot about it. 2-0 off the top of day one. Kind of surprising many in the sense that expectations around this team was that they would not be able to make it into the top four. Their region as a whole has definitely felt weaker, with a lot of the old staple organizations kind of dropping towards the bottom of the standings. And the arguments being made that, there wasn't really that much competition over in the LMS. So how would Flash Wolves, especially with 2 rookies and no Casa, be able to perform? But they came into the plains, they looked dominant. They come into day 1 and they look good. And now they love to cement that kind of superiority. They want to move their way up into the standings, and a win over North America would be a great way to do that.
And it looks like Flash Wolves are actually looking for a late invade. I think they're going to try to push Smithy off of his buff. We saw, actually Kingzone doing this with the Graves earlier in the tournament, trying to do that, and they're going to try to look to push him in. You can see already Smithy just has to straight up give up his buff and go elsewhere, but he's sticking around. He's going to try to maybe blast cone and steal it.
Mujin has been an aggressive jungler up until now in the tournament, and so even in Challenger Series when he was here in Europe, he was very willing to step forward.
Welter's coming
plays.
up. This is maybe going to be Flash Wolves getting pushed out, and
good delay there. Smithy spending his time around there.
Yeah, that's actually very important. I mean, that's a lot of wasted time there for Mujin, who wants to be the one pushing the pressure and having the tempo be set by him in this jungle matchup. But just the fact that they played that very patiently, they delayed, Pobelter gets lane pushed mid lane, that means he can come first, force Flash Wolves back.
And we have to look at Pobelter on this Yasuo into the Galio matchup in the mid lane. We talked about how the Galio works late and how the Yasuo outscales, but the lane matchup is so intriguing as well.
Yeah, the thing about Yasuo is we don't get to see him very often in competitive, but I'm sure many people at home have played against him in solo queue, and one of the things you'll find that's super obnoxious is that his early laning is actually very strong, because not only does he have base attacks, but the ability to reset those autos with the Q as well, and once he has the dashes, he has so much mobility. So typically when you have something like a Galio that just wants to wave clear, Yasuo makes it very difficult for you to really approach the wave.
Yeah, it's interesting, because when you were talking about annoying things with Yasuo in my solo queue games, I thought you were going to be talking about how they're all feeding.
That is also true, and hopefully Pobelter doesn't do that.
Hopefully for Team Liquid and for any NALCS fans out there as well. Not the best start in groups for them, 0-2 down, but I heard Doublelift talking in his interview yesterday saying, we just pretend we're 2-0. We come in with a positive mental attitude. We come in thinking that we can take down anyone who stands in our way.
Yeah, and I think protecting Pobelter is going to be so important in this when you have a comp where so much of the damage is about getting this really good last breath, this really good Yasuo ultimate in a team fight. You then have to have him be successful in lane, which means warding around him, which means tracking the Graves and preventing any potential ganks from coming in, because there's few laners who CC and set up ganks better than the Galio.
Mujin coming in from the side as well on the Graves. That's going to be a lot of burst damage if they can ever catch out Pobelter. You can already see that vision control for Team Liquid down in the bottom side river.
And Isaiah, you talked about how Pobelter was going to be one of the main players to watch for the side of Team Liquid, and for me it's kind of Betty and Maple, the two kind of carries for this Flash Wolves squad, because when you look at Maple's performance so far throughout this tournament, he has had a huge impact. And even though they did have a big stomp versus EVOS, they had a very commanding performance over Fnatic, and those just further amplified the stats that he's already had on groups of day 1.
I mean, Maple has been so good for so long, and last year was not his strongest year. A lot of analysts, a lot of players were thinking Maple was falling off, but this year back in the LMS, he was again so good, and bringing that now to the international stage, showing that he is back on form.
And of course, when we look at Maple and how strong he has been performing, the surprise then comes in from Betty, who is an individual who I thought was coming into the tournament a weak link. I thought that he was too overeager. Often he would put himself in positions that would just make it easy to catch him out, but he's been given big comfort picks in the Varus, and now we see him on something else. So the question falls on to, will he still be able to have that same impact for his team when he's not on a big comfort pick, or will he be exploitable from that of Team Liquid?
Yeah, I mean, it's a very different play style, the Ezreal compared to the Varus, and he was doing such a fantastic job for them, setting up ganks, setting up team fights with his very good ultimates, but now you are kind of more the follow-up. You are no longer the engage, and so much of that pressure then follows onto Swordart, who has been so good for Flash Wolves for so long, and who, in my opinion, is the star of the team. This guy is going to be needing to be on point with his bindings, finding the way in to start those fights.
And it's interesting that you mentioned Swordart, given that he's going up against Joey. The guy that no one expected at all to be playing in this tournament, the guy that's subbing in as Ole wanted to take a step back based on his performance and how he wasn't feeling like he was in a good position to perform. And he's going up against one of the best performing supports in the entire world.
And the question then becomes, can he stand up to that pressure? Can he actually meet with Betty and Swordart in that bottom lane. Can he facilitate double lift on this Caitlyn?
Smithy is behind Hanabi, but spotted out. And this may actually prompt Mugen to go for the dragon. I think if you can get this early Ocean Dragon, that would be so good. And he will go straight forward. I mean, 6 minutes. If you can take this down, it would be so good for them.
Looks like he should be able to get it for the moment. Ezreal coming up as well. And All-Star Stats seems to do a little bit of research. Pobelter has never played Yasuo in professional play before. Maybe you've met him in solo queue, Azael.
Not high enough elo. not even gonna pretend on that one.
You had an opportunity there. You can be like, oh yeah,
Maybe
we
when
play
he was
all
like
the time.
smurfing through my elo or something. But then he wouldn't have been feeding, so it probably wasn't him.
That's very true. Well, so far he's doing pretty well in terms of the laning phase, but Doublelift and Joey, not so much. One of the big things about Caitlyn, we talked a lot about how in the early game she wants to be lane dominant. And when we talked a lot about the potential Morgana answer for Flash Walls, it does give you that laning prowess into things like the Braum. And when you have a lot of poke coming out from the Morgana Ezreal, it becomes difficult for Doublelift and Joey to find that same sort of lane dominance and kind of push towards that early tower.
And Joey is actually down a Flash, so we didn't, I don't think, catch that on screen, how that got forced. So, perhaps, getting actually, caught out by Sword Art and having that force, maybe we will be able to catch that later. But Smithy, again, back up on the top side, trying to protect this matchup. And you have to say, Hanabi is not really handling the matchup very well. He's down over 20 CS in that 1v1. And you want to be kind of farming the gold off your opponent when they play a tank. That's often why people go Klepto. But at the same time, if you take Grasp, your laning power is that much higher. And the trade-off isn't really worth it if you're falling very far down.
But if you're a Liquid fan, you've got to be pretty happy, especially when you think about Impact's
Impact on tanks, baby, let's go!
Yeah. So the question is, what does he then do with the advantages that he's built up in top lane? One of the things I loved seeing from Impact was how often he would roam around the map. And you can see Smithy hanging around mid. Could they look for a play here?
Last breath onto Maple, but Maple should be able to just run away through that cannon barrage. And it's the safety of having a top laner with a global. Just able to clear out that wave and damage the opponents who are pressuring you.
But very little committed from TL, right? That is just the last breath. That is a much shorter cooldown than that of the Gangplank ultimate. That was not even Smithy dropping his ultimate. So a good little bit of pressure. And, to your point, how does Impact then extend that lead or get something more from it? It has to really be roaming. It's very unlikely that you're going to kill this guy 1v1, but Mugen coming mid lane.
Cobra knocked up, puts down the wind wall, and that's safety that you can have against Graves as Yasuo. When we saw Caps play it, we talked about how safe Yasuo actually is against ganks because you have the ability just to stop anything coming from the jungler.
But now they have priority over the middle lane with the push on bot and the fact that Pobelter just got forced back. 3 members of Flash Walls now have control over this red buff, and they want to try and take it away from Smithy.
And there's no TP on the top laners, so Joey is moving up.
Caught in a binding. Chunked out a little bit. Smithy might try and steal this one away. Had the pillar up, but eventually that red buff is going to walk out of vision. The smite too early. Smithy flashed away as well.
Yeah, I think Smithy should have just given that one up. I mean, even if you steal that, I don't think getting the red for your flash is really worth it with the low percentage chance of it really working. I mean, there's 3 Flash Wolves members around. It sucks to give up the red buff, but I think that's the call he should have probably made when Doublelift is not able to roam, Pobelter is not able to roam, and there's no TP on your top laner. So it is going to be very interesting for me also when we are getting into the team fights. You talked about the wind wall, but also the unbreakable from Braum, and this is against a double AD carry team, so how they use that is going to be very, very big.
And it is, we'll have to see how those team fights do develop, because both teams seem to have the tools to be able to win out a team fight. You've got the zone control from a Galio, from a Gangplank as well. Impact with that ultimate could totally change the outlook of a fight if he can combine with Pobelter. There is the last breath coming out. Mugen subjugated as well, flashes away, manages to survive. Pobelter putting the pressure on in that mid lane.
They get the flash out from Mugen in exchange for the cleanse from Pobelter.
I really do like how TL is actually targeting this Galio in the mid lane as well, because Galio, his real strength is actually answering engages on other people. You cannot ult to yourself. You have to be able to go to those side lanes, get out of there, and it's really similar to just attacking the global, or in this case, the semi-global. So I do think it is very intelligent, not only to protect Pobelter and get him to a strong point for team fighting, but also to just disable a lot of the playmaking ability that Maple might otherwise have.
I also think that, Galio is a champion. Typically, in the early levels, doesn't build a huge amount of armor. He is geared more towards Flashwolves dealing with mages, and so when you have Probelta just being able to just keep slapping you in the face with the sword, it becomes very difficult to have that same level of pressure. And you talked about the wind wall. Galio only really has one major wave clear tool, which is his Q, and obviously the wind wall, very long cooldown, you don't just want to throw it out. But if there's a wave, you sit there and go, you know what, I don't want you to have push. Your wind wall has wave clear, and then Maple is forced to go back, immediately giving Probelta priority and the ability to move and roam around with Xmith.
And we've also got to track, is Maple really going to go for armor at all, right? Or is he going to be just in more of an AP build, which is traditionally what we have been seeing.
Very true.
I do think that stacking armor could be fairly effective, but then you are very dependent upon the Ezreal and the Gangplank and the Graves to put out that damage. But I think in this case, it's okay because you have so much damage coming from everywhere else. And this is, a Yasuo and a Caitlyn who are only the ones really putting out that damage. There's only like a Frozen Heart random. It's going to be exceptionally powerful.
That occurred at the moment. Flashwolves about 1,000 gold ahead. Interesting to see Smithy going for the Relic Shield here. Walk into a lane, take a cannon, get all of that extra gold for yourself and for your AD carry or top laner if you're able to use it. But he's been very active on the map, hasn't found too much from it, but he's been helping his lanes actually relieve pressure when needed.
Yeah, and he's been doing a really good job, I think, tracking Mugen and defending his laners, right? Which is really what he wants to do, and I think the Relic Shield is, again, kind of lending itself towards that playstyle. He is saying, if we are not surprised, if we are the ones engaging, we will be the ones winning the fight. And getting that Relic Shield when it does upgrade into a Sightstone, that is going to help them even more so, controlling the vision and making those plays happen.
Ooh, Joey caught out with a binding here, teleport coming in the bottom lane as well, but Flashwolves, that's a little bit of an overextension.
Trying to force the turret.
Joins the fight. They are just going for the tower, as you say, not looking for the fight, but the wave clear from Team Liquid is enough to force Flashwolves back. They're waiting for the next wave.
So you get the teleport out from Maple, but the Gangplank ulti is available, teleport is up too. There's one ward behind, Impact could TP for the flank.
And Betty's really low, but they're going to come in.
Teleport comes in, Pobelter with a knock-up. Here comes the Galio Ulgo, trying to stop Team Liquid in their tracks. First blood goes to Impact. Mugen low off the backside, but Maple's answered here, and Betty is still alive in the front of this fight. Trying to catch on to Impact. Double it stands in the way, blocks his top laner for the moment.
It looks like it's a pretty even fight, but Flashwolves are able to come out just slightly ahead. The Galio ulti doing work as it reacts very effectively to the Team Liquid engage.
Yeah, and it's 2-for-1 in the trade, but getting the first turret is really the big win there for Flashwolves, and that is going to put them significantly ahead. 2.5k this early on is a pretty big deal.
And so far this Caitlyn is not working out for Liquid because they lose the first tower. They haven't gained any pressure in this part of the game, and we talk so much about this mid-game spike for the Flashwolves. You try to fight them at this point in the game, Flashwolves are going to be that much stronger. And oh, that was a really good dodge out from Betty to avoid being the primary target being bursted out. And you can see he's sitting on the flank, ready to just dish out the down.
Yeah, and Pobelter not actually able to get his ultimate over onto Betty. It did, hit instead just on the support there, and that is a really big deal. Had Betty been the one comboed there, maybe could have actually burst him down, but I have to say, definitely a big deal. And as far as the Caitlyn and the 2v2, support's coming in a lot of that too, right? It is a Morgana versus that Brahmin that is helping to enable them in that pressure game, but this is now the 2-item Ezreal, and that is the super scary point up against a Caitlyn who has no items completed. Yes, there are Ninja Tabbies that kind of delay that a bit, but still, not even a Shiv completed yet for Double Lift. It's going to be quite some time, and they need to have a way for him to farm freely and safely on the map, and with turrets falling down, it means they have to lane swap.
You can see that Flash was trying to answer that lane swap as well. At the moment, Impact and Smithy down towards this bottom lane. Hanabi did flash across the wall, but the pillar comes out. Hanabi's not in the best of shapes at all. Impact with the knock-up. And Gangplank not long for the rift. Impact will get his second kill.
Now, good punish here from Team Liquid. The fact that they take out Hanabi, it will enable them a bit of gold back on the board, but it does mean that you have no pressure towards the Rift Herald, which will be secured by the Flashwolves. And having that ability to play towards the mid lane tower is another thing we didn't really talk a lot about. With Team Liquid have very limited wave clear. When you draft a melee mid laner, you have the wind wall to delay a wave, but outside of that, there's not much you can do, as Smithy now makes his way up to the Herald.
Mugen did land the smite, so it went over to Flashwolves, but they have to try and pick it up here.
But at the same time, Betty is pushing your turret, so can you actually afford to just sit around and defend this when you're losing a turret right now? I mean, Doublelift is also losing the farm, and they're just going to actually sacrifice that turret because he didn't feel safe to be at the turret alone.
Yeah, Mugen trying to sneak in there, has the quick draw to jump out of the back of the pit as well. He secures it. Flashwolves able to play the dance. of the Rift Herald.
It feels very similar to the mistake I felt that TL made against Kingzone yesterday, where they kind of get paralyzed in between multiple options instead of just fully committing to one. If you're going to try to deny the Rift Herald, then you have to fully commit to that. But really, I think the right choice would have just simply been to give that up and defend your turret, because the Rift Herald represents an opportunity to kill a turret, whereas they just sacrifice one for the opportunity to maybe stop it.
Yep. And now they're immediately going to the middle lane, having taken both the bot and top towers. There's only one that stands in their way. And again, there's not a huge amount of wave clear on the side of Team Liquid. So even though we said that Flash Wolves, they don't have a lot of engage, right now they have pressure. And they're using that pressure to find advantages across the board.
And Team Liquid trying to keep this one alive. Betty there, but has the black shield on him to manage to escape. Joey continually caught with the bindings here. Perhaps a little bit of inexperience against such an experienced support in the form of Sword Art.
I mean, TL is just straight up getting out macroed at this point in the game.
Yeah.
You know, Flash Wolves are moving around the map better. That was, I think, a fairly large mistake from TL, trying to play around that Rift Herald. As a result, they don't defend their top turret. They lose Rift Herald anyway. That causes them to lose the mid turret. You know, that is a really big swing in the game. And when you are trying to buy time for your Caitlyn, for your Yasuo to scale up, that is terrifying. I mean, the Ezreal is already working, already has a second tier. Doesn't actually have the Mana, so that's kind of strange. But still, very strong point in the game.
That's a very good point. The other thing we have to take note of is you talked a little bit about scaling, and now this is kind of where the pressure comes on for both teams, because for Flash Wolves, taking tier 2s is the more challenging part of the game, because it involves a lot more vision control. You need to be able to manipulate your waves very well, and typically Flash Wolves have done a good job of it, but against Team Liquid, who set up a lot of effective defensive vision, it will not be the easiest setup in the world. And you can see that typically they get pretty healthy early gold leads. Again, kind of inflated a little bit by their stomp over EVOS, but they still had a very convincing game versus Fnatic as well. So for Team Liquid, their goal now is to just mitigate as much vision control away from the Flash Wolves and allow Yasuo to get to a point where he can generate so much pressure in a side lane that the Flash Wolves can't just as comfortably group up and just keep taking these towers for free.
Definitely agree. And it is scary, especially not just the gold lead, but the fact that 2,000 of that gold lead is individually on Betty over Doublelift, right? That is exactly where you want it, you know, in a team like this. And it's going to be up to, you know, much like the Fnatic game yesterday with Caps on Yasuo, it's going to be up to Pobelter to actually create some time and delay the game through that side lane pressure. He needs to be able to make a play or draw pressure and survive, and that's not something that TL has excelled at.
Will he survive this, though?
Yeah, Sword Art's on his way as well. Mujin there, the cannon barrage comes out. Pobelter with a great flash, but Sword Art pops down the Soul Shackles. There's the binding as well, the cleanse in the end, but you cannot get away from the Flash Wolves. They hunt in a pack, and they take down Pobelter.
And this is what we talk about, having a good setup when you're pushing lanes, because Team Liquid cannot get anything else off the map. Flash Wolves had pushed up mid, they had Gangplank clearing down bot, and they had so much vision control over the top side of Team Liquid's jungle that they're able to find themselves a kill, and now they have numbers advantage.
I mean, it has really been kind of a classic mistake from Pobelter, is he struggles in the side lanes. He's often too far up without vision or without that coverage, and he does tend to get picked off a lot in split push. You know, even I was not expecting this even more so, because, you know, hearing Doublelift talk about yesterday in his interview the fact that they do not play side lanes well, they do not play split push well, to see them go back to this, and, you know, Pobelter, it's a nice attempt at the escape, but in the end, it's both summoners down, and he still loses his life.
We kind of wanted Team Liquid to go back to what they are best at, that team fighting style that we have seen from them throughout the course of the NALCS playoffs and throughout the split as well. But at the moment, Flash Wolves are doing exactly what they're best at, which is out-macroing their opponents and finding these picks. Currently 4,000 gold ahead, coming up to that 20-minute mark.
And some of that is inflated by the fact that they have a double Klepto. Even though Hanabi has fallen behind in lane, he's been able to stay even in gold. And now he's built up a pretty healthy gold lead, whereas Betty is far and above of Doublelift 2 levels as well. Now Pobelter, he's stuck again.
Flash, Torn, there's the Winds of War as well. Mujin secures the kill on Pobelter. There's a fight up towards the top side as well, though, because here comes the hero's entrance. Sword Art was caught out, but Joey and Smithy now need to run away because Hanabi has the flank. Doublelift there as well. Impact. Joey the first to fall. Doublelift takes a chunk as well, but will escape.
And that's Joey's flash right into the wall there, and this means Flash Wolves are going to get Baron. And honestly, at this point of the game, being down almost 6,000 gold, giving up a 20-minute Baron is realistically the game.
At what point do we have to start calling this the pole belter? Because this is now the third time in MSI where we've seen him overextend in a side lane and just give up a kill for free without respecting the lack of vision and the ease of ability for the enemy team to just collapse on you. With him now down and with a successful fight around this area, Flash will secure one of the earliest Barons of MSI.
You have to give credit to Flash Wolves, though, because as much as Pobelt is overextending, the vision control from them, the ability to make these picks is what's allowing them to snowball the game away from Team Liquid.
And that's one of those things that's going to be very tough when you are bringing in a support who has no LCS experience, let alone international and MSI experience. Your vision control, your movements around the map, whose responsibilities are what, are going to be that much harder. And Pobelts are getting picked off on the top lane. Galio can respond to this play very quickly with his ultimate, the TP coming in from Hanabi. They're getting flanked on all sides, and you can't make a play like this when you are already down a man, when you're already down the gold, and the Galio ultimate is both in range and available, and TL get punished massively for it, and now down 8,000 gold, down a Baron buff. They are likely going to lose multiple tier 2s on this push.
Yep, and the thing is, for Flash Wolves, we talked a lot in the draft about how they have a strong mid-game spike. Well, they had an early game lead, and now they're at the strongest that this comp can be. They've got so many completed items, they are looking extremely good, and with the Baron, it's only a matter of time before they break into the base of Team Liquid. The only bright side for Team Liquid is, in theory, getting an inhibitor should be very difficult because there's only 2 minutes left on the Baron and there are still tier 2s up.
But still, all of those objectives will give more gold into the hands of Flash Wolves, and then the next fight becomes easier and easier. Pobelt is splitting up towards that top side, which means Flash Wolves will push down towards bot lane. Second tier tower is going to fall here for Flash Wolves, and then they'll rotate back up towards mid and group up as a 5-man.
And look at how they keep extending their vision deeper and deeper, making it harder for Team Liquid to answer from this pressure. They have the GP ulti if they want to try and zone Liquid away from this tower, and now we see the siege being set up from the Flash Wolves.
And what a turnaround this is for Flash Wolves as well. Coming into the tournament, a lot of people wondered if without Casa they could actually have the same effect at MSI, same effect at international tournaments that they have in the past. Well, once again, they are proving that they can play with the big dogs. They can challenge for those semifinals, final spots.
And they can best them. I mean, they are dominating Team Liquid in this game. They are head and shoulders above as far as this game's performance. And they are closing in on a 10,000 gold lead at 23 minutes.
Yeah, and we have to admit that Team Liquid perhaps not playing in their strongest form, with Ole not being on the roster and Joey being in a situation where he's not really prepared for, but at the same time you can take nothing away from the performance of Flash Wolves because they're not just stomping bot lane, they are punishing the small individual mistakes from Liquid, they are playing around the map very well, and their vision overall is just controlling Liquid's every action and move.
Here comes that inhibitor push with the Baron as well. Joey trying to put up the wall to stop Flash Wolves, but you've got a Graves, you've got an Ezreal, you've got a Gangplank, you're going to shred through that tower pretty quickly. Jump in as well from Betty. The confidence that he has in his play at the moment after the Varus games yesterday, the Ezreal game today. Flash Wolves get the inhibitor, a 10,000 gold lead, 24 minutes in, and they've even started a slow push in the top lane for the final 30 seconds of this Baron buff.
Yeah, I mean, they're going to get this as well. Betty is a full item ahead and just so insanely strong at this point of the game. It's hard to imagine a world in which TL can actually delay this game long enough to catch up.
And even if they do lose this game, as a Team Liquid fan, you shouldn't feel too disheartened. It's only day 2. We have 5 days of groups. Like, you can still come back from going 0-3, 0-4. We've seen it happen in the past. Should not be too dismayed with the performance of your team thus far.
And the thing about Team Liquid is I'm waiting for them to return to their strengths because we saw the flip for Fnatic, right? Day 1, they kind of played uncharacteristically. They put Woodbow on carries. Reckless was underperforming. And then coming into day 2, they were like, you know what? Okay, we made a mistake. We'll put a tank up top lane. We'll put Reckless on something that he's comfortable with. Caps can still play a carry. And they played a style that worked very well for them. And they found a surprise win. Whereas Liquid are still showing the same weaknesses that we saw from yesterday. The bright side is Impact definitely has had a better performance. He seems a lot more comfortable on these tanks. But as a team, where is that teamwork that made Team Liquid so successful during the playoffs and secured themselves the championship.
And a lot of people are going to be wondering, where is the control mage? Where is the standard Cobelter playstyle? Because having him on a Yasuo is something that is definitely very atypical. And he has struggled in the side lanes, he has struggled getting picked off, and that is a champion which really does need to play in and dominate in the side lanes to create pressure, to buy time, because Yasuo cannot sit back and wave clear. You don't have the safety to do that. And the way you relieve pressure is by drawing members to you in a side lane and either killing them or wasting their time.
Yep.
Flash Wolves looking for this bottom lane inhibitor now. Just continually choking out Team Liquid. Not allowing them even to jump into their own jungle, not allowing them any CS apart from the minions that are pushed towards the towers. The last breath comes out, but Cobelter just does nothing. No damage at all, and Flash Wolves are looking for the win here. Just need to force Team Liquid back from the inhibitor tower. Super Minions pushing in the mid lane as well. Betty jumps forward, looking for impact, and Smithy, the flash is away, the flash is forward. Flash Wolves going deep to the Team Liquid base. They'll secure 2 more kills, and now they can look for that inhibitor as well.
Liquid tried to go for a desperation defense, but it just wasn't enough. The gold lead is too insurmountable, and Flash Wolves are looking to take top of the group.
Flash Wolves playing an incredible game, showing another style, a new draft, and completely outclassing TL in this game.
Absolutely dominant performance here from the Flash Wolves. They're not done yet. They want to pick up those final kills as well. The hero's entrance from Maple, who has been a hero this entire game, and with that win, Flash Wolves go top of the MSI table.
And overall, just a very good performance from the Flash Wolves. They had the strong early game lanes. Yes, we did see Hanabi falling behind a little bit, but his impact was felt in a lot of those fights. When we saw a couple of ganks come out from Smithy, his ulti came in clutch to dissuade that, and they were able to utilize Maple in many of the fights that Liquid tried to force. But that then brings into question is, why were Liquid trying to force any fights? They needed to scale, they needed to play these side lanes, and Flash Wolves never gave them the opportunity.
Yeah, they certainly didn't, and it's tough because the amount of pressure that was being created by Betty and Sword Art was really, I think, pushing Liquid into a place where they felt like they had to make plays, and all the credit in the world to Betty and Sword Art for being able to have that pressure, for being able to win that lane. And I think despite the fact that the Caitlyn may be a strong early laner, when you have the Morgana in addition to this Ezreal up against the more melee support and this more inexperienced laner here in Joey, it's going to be very tough to match up against this bottom lane, and in the game today they were found wanting.
There were, you can see Flash Wolves very happy with their spot at the top of the table. Still have RNG to play later on, so that would be a titanic clash between the two of them. Team Liquid need to recuperate because they have to play Fnatic later as well.
Because we've seen 2 really good performances from both RNG and Flash Wolves today, so you're expecting this to be a kind of clash towards the top right now, especially after Kingzone kind of showed weaknesses in their impenetrable armor.
And I mean, as someone watching this tournament, maybe I'll say, oh, well, CL's not on form, oh, they got that one. Well, Fnatic didn't play that well yesterday, yeah, they got that one. If Flash Wolves beat RNG,
yeah,
they are a legitimate threat to take the tournament, and that would be a really big statement to make.
It definitely would. It's like for the entire LMS region, you would be incredibly happy if you can see Flash Wolves actually pushing that far, because the last 2 MSIs, they played well, but they've always been stymied at the semi-final stage, never actually making it to that final.
Yeah, and now they have their big tests ahead of them with RNG coming up and then Kingzone tomorrow. Whether they can maintain that performance will be the ultimate question around this team, but so far, they have looked very convincing.
That they have, and I think that what we need to wonder about as well is the fact that Team Liquid, on the other hand, with Joey, have to actually entirely change the way that they play,
yes,
really. They have to go back to being that team-fighting sort of style.
Yeah, I mean, it's very difficult. You're bringing in a new support. Often, a lot of the shot calling and tracking of summoner spells and vision control, all these sorts of things often go through the support player. You're introducing someone with no scrims, no practice with the team into that system and expecting them to pick that up. It's very difficult, and it can show in ways other than just the laning phase. So they're going to have to figure that out very quickly, and you have to wonder how their mental state is going to be after 3 pretty convincing losses.
And you're going up against some of the best bot lanes in the world, so it is definitely an uphill challenge for Joey. He's hoping that he can find a better performance later in the day.
Yeah, to get their thoughts on the Flash Wolves win, let's head over to the State Farm Analyst Desk.
Thank you very much, Medic. Another dominating victory out of Flash Wolves, moving to 3-0. Now the tournament leaders in the midway point of day 2 for the group stage. And for Team Liquid, continued struggles. I think it's time to take the kid gloves off and really put a critical eye to this squad and what their tournament chances are after a performance like this following the substitution of Ole.
I mean, at the end of the day, every team has now played 3 games here. I think we just saw the best and the worst team face each other. I think the Flash Wolves have performed the best, and very clearly Team Liquid, they tried something.
Performance-wise, you're not saying Flash Wolves is
Performance-wise,
better
sure.
than
I'm not
King
power
K.
ranking. I'm saying
Yeah,
we've
yeah.
seen 3 games. Flash Wolves played the best games.
They are 3-0.
Okay, but I want to kick this one off, and I want to say like why I'm struggling with Team Liquid, and it does start in the draft phase. I was not a fan of the Yasuo pick. I know that we talked about it a lot backstage, and
We said keep
particularly
it simple, right?
Exactly. And Yasuo into Galio, like, I understand that, but specifically for Pobelter. Pobelter has this issue where between lane phase and team fights, he just gets lost. He constantly dies out into these side lanes. You see it all the time during the regular split. And to give him the type of responsibility to play a 1-4, like, in the lane phase, I have no problem with Pobelter having that pick. Outside of lane phase, he was caught at 2 pretty critical moments, and it doesn't make sense with how Team Liquid have been picking this up, and it doesn't make sense to Pobelter.
I agree. And it doesn't make sense based on what Double said yesterday. He had an interview with Travis where he said, yeah, we're pretty bad at split push. Papa
split
Smithy
push.
wanted them to keep it simple. Karma was up.
Right.
You're picking
Caitlyn.
an early Caitlyn. You want to have lane priority, and you're building this team fight composition. Otherwise, you don't pick Braum. You pick a laning support that can shove better. So the way you get Caitlyn bridge there is by picking a shoving safe mid laner like Karma. It's a better team fighter. You don't have to split push. That was such a huge draft miss, but I mean, with the way they played, even if they had Karma, I don't think they had a chance.
I also think it was blind Yasuo, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So it wasn't like he even saw the Galio and thought about the matchup. I think it was the Ezreal is going to come out because they put priority on the Trundle, and I just have to assume that if you have a Braum, if you have a Yasuo wind wall into Unbreakable, maybe that was them trying to experiment with how to deal with Ezreal. Just complete speculation, but otherwise, just a lot of question marks.
Right, but again, to Papa Smithy's point, why are you speculating as a team, right? In the middle of a tournament, when you're down 0-2 to kick off your entire tournament, why not return to what can work, to what you know works? Rely on your 5v5, because ultimately we saw them try and 5v5. There was a point in the game where Team Liquid bled objectives for 2 to 3 minutes straight, and it was all off of their own decision to try and defend a turret and start a fight.
I think that this Team Liquid team is in total turmoil right now.
Absolutely.
And they don't have the time to recover. Remember, they had a very inconsistent regular season. They actually had a whole stretch of about 3 weeks where they looked pretty bad. And now, instead of getting to recover against Optic and FlyQuest, they're trying to recover against Flash Wolves and King Zone, right? So they do not have time. This was a game, remember, that they played with Joey, a guy that I don't think has scrimmed with the team. They have murals in their practice facility with their roster and their coach.
Yep.
Joey's not in those murals, right? It's very clearly supposed to be Ole in these games. So the fact that he stepped down, I think, showed you how much turmoil the team was in. And then this game reaffirmed that that is very real.
Because we're talking about keeping it simple, right? And the trust falls are gone. They don't even have the same roster. After 1 day's play off the back of a very good playoff run, Ole is allowed to step down. It is a team decision. Obviously, we know he's an emotional player. He's made the decision. He was allowed to make the decision. They happened to have a substitute for him. But there's no trust falls even in their team comps, in their starting 5. They don't seem to know how they won League of Legends games just weeks ago. And it was pretty visible here. This was about as one-sided as can be.
I mean,
Do you want to continue
There's
on the
lots
team?
to
I
say.
feel like they only scrim Fnatic.
It's what it looks like.
The Yasuo
I mean, we see
was
Yasuo,
Caps'
the
pick.
Jhin.
Yasuo was his pick. They're the only ones picking Yasuo. They're the only ones picking Jhin. They're the only team's not prioritizing Karma. They're the only team's not prioritizing Ezreal. It's like they're in this tiny pocket. And it is hard to separate champion picks from execution because I think there's a little bit of both here. But not only are they playing bad, I also think they have a bad read on the best champions right now, which is just exacerbating the issue.
Frosk.
I just wanted to try to inflate some happiness back into the moment. But on the other side, we got to see exactly what Flash Wolves are so good at and
Yes.
why
let's
they
do
were
that.
so dominant in the LMS. And it's when you give them that driver's seat, when you get to watch them prioritize what objectives they're going to move around to, how they're making their map rotations, they are a very clean team. Usually when you think about the LMS, the LPL, you're like, it's team fighting all the time. And yeah, they can't opt into the team fights, but Flash Wolves are much more practiced at playing around objectives, of having poke champions. Varus is one of Betty's best champions. Of course he's going to be able to transition onto into an Ezreal and just be so brutal to Liquid if they ever gave away, 3 objectives all at once.
And with that, with the success of Flash Wolves here in this game, we can take another look at the standings halfway through day 2. Sole possession of first place for this LMS squad. Of course, they're right above both Kingzone and RNG.
No one was going to say that at the beginning of this tournament.
But also looking at the schedule, they're yet to play RNG and Kingzone, the 2 teams that are in direct competition to them. So if I had to say now where I think they'll be after 5 games, I think they'll be 3-2.
Okay.
So I think they had an impressive performance so far, but the big tests for them are
Still to
next.
come, still to come. All right, I do want to turn back to Team Liquid just briefly because they've got one more game to play. And while we talk about the substitution for of Joey and the fact that it was initiated by Ole himself, my question is whether or not that should remain. Should Ole be coming back in for Game 6 against Fnatic? What's our take there?
I think quite simply the answer is no. I think at some point they tried something different. Okay, let's change the morale, bring in Joey. Let's try a Pabelta focus draft and have him go for the Yasuo. Clearly didn't work. That was their worst performance, I would say, of the 3. So just now, okay, let's listen to Papa this time. Keep it simple. Let's go for Pabelta on a control mage, Ole back in the team. Ole's just sat back and watched that game. What does Ole think about that game is what I'd love to know, because I think it has to be better if he's back in the lineup.
I think, and this is speculation.
Yes.
If Ole sat down and took himself out because he didn't think he was playing well enough for the team to win, I think this game could be very illuminating because they did really badly without him. So maybe he can say,
a sigh of relief.
In a weird way,
It's
it's reassuring that it's not solely his fault.
Yeah.
The first 2 losses of the tournament.
so get back in there. You've played all the games with the team. Go at it against Fnatic.
All right, but we want to simplify. That's what we want to see out of Team Liquid for Flash Wolves. It's all roses right now, but their biggest tests are still to come. For more on that game, though, we're going to send it to Shox, who's with the victorious AD carry.
Thank you very much, guys. I'm sending by with Betty after the Flash Wolves are now 3-0 at MSI. You guys are undefeated, which is a fantastic performance. How do you expect it to do so well, knowing that this is the first time that this lineup of Flash Wolves comes into an international tournament? And why do you think you guys are crushing it?
首先，电狼表现得非常好，目前你们是全胜5败的战绩。那这是你们队伍是全新的组合，第一次打世界级的比赛嘛？那你们有想到你们会表现这么好吗？还是这是你们本来就预计的？
因为之前的世界赛我表现的就是不太好嘛，然后回来之后我就已经做了很多准备，我训练了非常多的英雄，然后改进了很多我之前的缺点，就是我会打得不太敢打架，就是会一直想农，但这次来我就不农，我就是能打架就打架，然后我也要一直的有很高的 CS 数，对。
So last time I did kind of poorly at Worlds. I think mostly due to one of my fatal flaws is like we were afraid to start team fights, like especially me. This time, like when we went back last time, I practiced and like we focused on doing that. So right now, like before, sometimes I'm worried about like getting into team fights and like stick to farming. But this time, we whenever we see a chance, we decide to go in aggressively. And I will also keep an eye on my CS and performing well.
Well, I would say that historically you have also been quite underrated as an AD carry on the international stage. How big is that hunger for you to prove yourself and set yourself as one of the best AD carries of the tournament?
所以感觉上你是一直被低估的一个 AD carry， 在世界上就是评价。那你有没有觉得你要特别证明什么，还是你要想怎么做？
因为现在我们3-0嘛，然后我们赢的2支队伍有世界前4强的 AD， 那我都赢了，那我现在应该是世界前几的了，对。
So out of the team sweep B, there are some top 4 ranking ADs in the world right now. So I guess that puts me in contention with them.
Definitely does. Betty, are you ready to beat Uzi or playing RNG later? Is that possible?
他说：“贝，你准备好击败 Uzi 下一场吗？就是你觉得这可能吗？”
我会尽我最大的力量来去击败 UDI， 即使他真的很强，对。
I'll try my best, but he's really strong.
He is really strong, but you've been doing great so far. The Flash Wolves undefeated. Thank you very much.